Joaquin, it is an absolute honor getting to talk to you today.
Get out of town.
I'm serious, so thank
Come
you for
on.
the time
Well,
today.
thank you for being here.
Yeah, I love the new angle that you took on this film, and one of the things I love about it is this idea of music therapy. And there's a line in the film, how we use music in this class to make us feel whole. How important was music to you growing up?
It was important. I mean, my siblings and I sang from a very young age. We actually performed together, so it was such a big part of my household, and we were always kind of singing. And then it's something that, quite honestly, in my adolescence and teen years, I drifted away from, and something I never considered. My siblings all carried on. My sister's a pianist, and my sister has a band and solo records. And so it was interesting to have music kind of brought back in. It had been a long time. The last time I think I really sang was "Walk the Line," because I don't even like sing in the shower. I'm not one of those people. You know what I mean? Like, I don't drive and sing. So it was important, and
I love your family and how you talk about them. That's really special and beautiful. Take me back. I love the fact that you are not on social media. You live a very private life. How did you know that your version of Arthur and Joker was really resonating with audiences?
I don't. I mean, I imagine that I'm sure Todd texted and was like, "Brah, it's actually doing pretty well." I know he probably was like, "Listen, you're going to be very disappointed to hear this, but it's a success." And it was something, I typically have been a part of smaller films. They're not always successful financially, and this obviously was a really big movie, and I was surprised and delighted.
I mean, you've been in very successful movies, like just you as the actor, like The Master and Her are phenomenal movies. Describe Lady Gaga as a collaborator, because I can't imagine anyone else in this role besides her.
No. Yeah, in some ways, it's interesting. Like, my idea of who she was and who I was going to be working with was intimidating. And then I remember I went to dinner with her and Todd, and actually we met at her house, and she was just cool and easy, and like talk about anything, and felt like effortless, the conversations that we were having about the character. And then Todd and I went to dinner, and I was like, should we ask her? And I thought, like, oh, you're gonna have to like clear it through security and shit. And he just called her, and she answers like, yeah. He's like, do you want to come meet us? We're gonna go down the street have dinner. She goes like, yeah. And she's just in her car, and next thing you know, she's at the restaurant. And then we just started talking about music. And I was like, okay, well, this is a great opportunity because I don't really understand what goes into kind of recording a song. And it was just, she has a way of explaining kind of the process, and she talks about music and what it means to her in a way that is, it's really intimate and interesting. And so immediately, I think Todd and I both felt like, okay, this is like, right, this is the match for Arthur, and the way that she talked about the character and how she wanted to communicate with him. So it was, we were very lucky to have her.
Yeah, if you are having a bad day, what does Joaquin put on to make you happy?
I have kids now. I don't have bad days.
Oh my God, I got the rap. Thank you.
Joaquin, congratulations on the film and the reception. I have to start with this question for you, sir. As a musical theater nerd, you got to sing with Lady Gaga. Like, seriously, I'm kind of jealous. 20 years nearly after Walk the Line. What was it like returning to this musical format with literally one of the most recognizable voices on the planet?
Thank God I didn't think about it that way, because that would have been so overwhelming. And thankfully, Stephanie, as I call her, didn't come with any of that like Lady Gaga energy, because I think that would have been overwhelming to me. There are these musical elements, and it was important to me that they really reflect what the characters are going through emotionally in an authentic way versus we're performing songs. And so there is that tendency to, if you're making a film and there are musical numbers in it, that you're going to approach it in a certain way as if it belongs to a particular genre. Maybe technically it does. I don't know about that. But I know that it was important that it feel real. Like, why is the character singing? Why are they singing this song? Where did they hear this song? He's not a professional singer. He's a terrible performer. We know this from the first film. So it needs to feel deconstructed. And, initially the references that I had were like Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., these like beautiful performances that were by accomplished entertainers that were very comfortable in their medium. And it's not comfortable for Arthur. And so that was a kind of like, I think it seems obvious now, but at the time, it felt like this epiphanous moment where we said, well, hold on, that shouldn't be the goal. Like, Frank Sinatra is not the reference for this. Frank is somebody that Arthur's heard on the radio, but he's incapable of singing a song like that. And what I really want is like a child, like when a child sings a song and it's so meaningful to them, they're giving it their all, but it's, there's like a lot of notes that are like not quite there, and the phrasing is off. I felt like, well, that is Arthur. And so that was a really big moment, I think, when we realized like, okay, that became the North Star for me.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because there's all these incredible and tender moments still between the two of you. Like, I think that's what folks are going to be very surprised with, is in these musical numbers are some of the more, I think, sweeping and also moving moments of it. I'm curious how you and Lady Gaga found that on set together and found that intimacy, because it's right there in the lens. Like, it's undeniable. Like, you really do feel that these are two people falling in a tragic love story,
Yeah, I just would come in and be like, listen, just you warm up a little bit and just watch and learn. And I relied on her so much. Really, Stephanie was the first person that was like, we should film these live. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it live. That's crazy. And she was like, and she was so sweet because she said, okay, then don't. Like, if that's not comfortable for you, the most important thing is like that you're comfortable. So I think that like when she said that to me in that way, it made me feel like really kind of safe and connected with her. I felt like, okay, this is a journey that we're going to share together. And that felt really important. And yeah, I think part of it's like, at some point it's just like any other scene where you can't think about the end result. You just have to go through the experience of the moment and try to connect to her. And she was so open and so raw. There's a scene where she sings Close to You. It was so deconstructed and raw. And I was really moved by it. I didn't expect it. And I think a few takes in, it just really took me by surprise. So, so much of it is really just like listening and being there with the other person.
What was your reaction when you heard how musical that you were going to be in this?
Todd and I had been talking about performance and about this character performing songs. And so it was something that was like on our mind, and music was such a big part of the first film. But I didn't anticipate that he was going to really find a way to really bring music into this film in the way that he and Scott Silver did. And I was... yeah, I thought that it was challenging. I guess what was important to us is that every musical number was really motivated, that it really felt like the reason that this character is going to sing in this moment is because it is the only way that they can communicate their feelings. And that felt really important. And once we kind of like had the understanding, it became kind of clear how we wanted to approach the music. It must be, for you as well. You must be tired of walking into a room.
Well, not really. From our perspective, this is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, right? So you got to take the best of it.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice to hear that perspective. Thanks for being here.
Mr. Phoenix, welcome to Radioactiva. A great pleasure having you with us.
Thank you.
I'm really, really impressed. I had to ask you, how do you develop this side of your character? Now we have him singing. We know that he loves music from the first part, but showing that side of him, you know, show that part of his personality. How do you develop that?
With a lot of help. But seriously, I mean, I worked with this a great vocal coach, Roger Love, who I actually worked with on a movie called Walk the Line, like 20 years prior.
Johnny Cash.
And really, what part of it was finding like what is your range, what part do you strengthen, and when do you kind of push to the boundaries of that range? Because I realized at some point that the idea was to find like the voice of the character, not necessarily to sing good, right? It was to try to kind of find something that seemed there's something plaintive and emotional and kind of desperate in some ways, the way that he sings, and trying to find the difference between how Arthur may sing and how Joker may sing. So it was really, working with Jason Ruder and George Drakoulias, and of course with Todd. In some ways, the singing, Todd would always say, singing is basically dialogue. And so in some ways, you're just trying to find what is the emotional core of that scene in that moment, whether you're speaking the dialogue, whether you're singing it. So I had a lot of help.
And how did you find that voice? I mean, I remember, since you mentioned Walk the Line, the tone of Johnny Cash. And now, of course, your character has this different kind of voices for different kind of songs. You already did the good singing on Walk the Line. Now you're just, this guy with this different sort of things inside him. How do you find those tones, I guess?
Well, we just kept pushing and to try to hit like a higher and higher note, and then you would just go through. I worked with this great pianist, Alex Jules, and we would just try to find with like George and Jason, just try and find like what was the best key, the most comfortable key for me to sing in, and then we would just move it up some octaves and just try to find like what is the point where it feels like it's on the verge of cracking, and then we would try to select the song, the like key of the song based on that.
I have to ask, how was your reaction when they
You don't have to ask anything, by the way. This is your time. And you can do whatever you want with it. You can sing me a song. I just want you to know that.
I
want you to feel comfortable, because sometimes you come in here and I feel you feel some pressure. You can just be you.
I can't help but feel nervous, of course, but
don't be nervous. You're amazing. You look good. You've got everything together. You got nice shoes. Don't be nervous.
Okay. I do have to ask you, how was your reaction when they told you they were gonna be a sequel for Joker, and this time it was gonna be a musical? I do not think the movie is a musical per se, but I have to know your perspective.
Yeah, Todd and I had been talking about performance. And Arthur and Joker as a performer, and of course he had sung a little bit in the first one, and music was such a big part of that film that it seemed like a natural extension. And I thought it would be interesting and challenging, and we didn't talk about it as a musical in that. We just didn't want that to limit us. We didn't want to call it a musical. It's a film in which the characters express themselves at times through song.
Mr. Phoenix, thank you very much for this.
Thank you. So nice to see you.
Have a very nice day.
It's just an idea that we were kind of playing with, but it was never intended to be part of the sequel or anything. And I don't know whether that had any effect on Todd. He might not even remember it. Or maybe it is part of what maybe sparked an idea, but it's really just an extension of what was happening in the first film, which there was music in that film that I think was really integral to the character and to the character's journey.
I spent time with Joaquin, I spent time with Todd, and we talked a lot about who would be the right match for Arthur. And I loved the first film so much, and the character Arthur Fleck was so special. And you know, it's an interesting kind of like exercise, right? When you think about a woman, like who she is entirely on her own, all the complexities that you can create with someone like Lee or Harley Quinn. But then when you add Arthur into the mix and Joker, it just kind of like takes on a whole new life. Who would be Arthur's match? Who would be Joker's match? And then in the like fantasy elements of the film, there's moments where I thought a lot about what he would need at that moment. Like, what would Arthur be dreaming? Who would be the woman that is like giving him wings to, you know, fly in this next like moment in his life?
I think he just is having like a feeling that he can't really articulate because it's something that's new for him. Close your ears. Arthur's a virgin. And so I think that when he sees Lee, he has you know a physiological response that he's just really not familiar with. I think it's the first time really that he is struck by someone in that way and feels that there is like a connection. And after years of not having any kind of connection, it's really quite powerful. And she seems to understand him. The first time they speak, she shares a story about her life and her experience, and it really resonates with Arthur. And she seems to appreciate his humor. So I think it's for him, it's an instant connection. And immediately following, we see him for the first time kind of burst out in song. And it goes from like the beginning of the film, he's largely silent. I don't know how long it is, but he just really doesn't speak or communicate. And then once he interacts with Lee, he suddenly comes alive and literally bursts out into song. And I thought that was just a really kind of a beautiful way to try to capture this like abundant feeling that he has.
I actually think that always in singing, there is a connection to trying to find the truth. And I think that's true in acting as well. And I think that what we were really trying to do was steer me out of the realm of all of the things that I do as a performer and entertainer on my stage. And that made so much sense for this character because she's not me. And we were building an entirely new reality. And I don't actually only sing in that like completely naked way the whole film. There's moments in the film where, you know, the voice is much more full, and I was sort of imagining like maybe this is the moment where like Arthur's dreaming he's like bagged a babe, you know, and she's like really going for it. But in other moments, it's kind of like Lee, you know, maybe soothing herself, or she is like trying to find the words to defend or explain or confess something to him. So I actually really enjoyed it. It was very scary at first, and it was super hard for me, and we like spent a lot of time working on this. But once I found it, it was nice because I had a lot more to play with because I wasn't like locked into one thing. And you used to say things to me like, no, like, is that a trick that you do? Or, you know, like my technique, like the way that I perform, like I had to kind of turn that off at moments and just make a totally new voice.
Yeah, I witnessed it. I did. I witnessed it. It was bold, and I imagine it was scary. It was like it seemed like it was difficult. I mean, I saw you like switch from like performance to then just like something more internal, and it was really exciting when that happened in the studio. Then I think you went even further, but I glimpsed that first moment, and I thought it was really bold.
Thank you. I think we had different ways of thinking about it too, like the way that he sort of could like clue into my different moments and like what I was doing. I remember we were in the studio and I was like, oh, like you guys are really responding to it when it's more immature. And so to me, there's something I think about singing that I connect with like wisdom or like my understanding of life. And Lee is kind of like, in moments, just, I think she's kind of like completely locked into Joker and into Arthur, and the voice is kind of, it's like, it's just not coming from a completely mature place. It's coming from a much more young place. Like when I sing in the shower, or when I'm just like moseying along, or if I'm sad and I just start to hum, like less of a performance and more, especially like Get Happy in the Hallway. I feel like that was really special, because I was basically trying to tell him something that I just like couldn't say in any other way. I was very excited to work with Todd, and I actually thought that his vision for the movie was very risky and really different, and I like that. You know, I think doing things that are a little bit scary is super rewarding and allows you to try to make something completely original. So I think that we were just trying also on set every day to help him execute his vision and you know, give him all the various things that he would need to put it all together. The movie's super surreal, so kind of the more we gave, I think, the more that he had to work with.
For some reason, very early on, I talked to Todd about tap dancing. It was something I thought like it would be a new, interesting part of the character to explore. And so I was like, yeah, I did it when I was younger. So, you know, let's just throw some tap shoes on and hit it. And then the difference between like being 8 and 48 is substantial. And it was much more difficult than I'd anticipated. But we worked for months, and it's a very short sequence. But when I saw, when I was on set and Stephanie was actually performing, and by the second take, her fingers were bleeding, and I could see the veins in her neck when she was singing. And so I was like, well, I've got to like really like give it my all here. And I did like one take, and I was like, that's it, I'm done. I can't. I was exhausted immediately.
You did it so many times, though.
Yeah, but that's because you kept going, and literally your fingers were bleeding. This is not a story I'm making up. I mean, it's literally bleeding. And so I just felt like obligated to keep going. But it was, hopefully it just like captures the energy of the characters. There's just something like exciting about seeing Joker tap dancing. I don't know, it just seemed like it would be a funny image.
You know, that moment's like at the height of their romance with each other. So, you know, I thought it was really cool seeing Joker do something very traditional in this kind of like wild way. I thought you did a good job.
Thank you. Oftentimes when you're coming to the end of a film, you're like, I want it over, I'm done. I didn't want it to end.
Gaga, why was it of interest to you when there's so many things you can do at any given moment?
You know, the film that they made the first time together, Joker, that was what really interested me in being a part of this one, because I loved Arthur so much. Like, who would be the love in his life?
I would say we were under a microscope from the very beginning, and then we bring Lady Gaga in. But I mean, it's kind of why we do what we do, right? To take risks.
The billion-dollar risk, the film's fantasy sequences, in which these two are shown singing live on the set.
How could we possibly do the music in the most honest way possible? When we first started, I did not want anything to be spontaneous, and I wanted to sound as good as possible. And Lady Gaga said,
Joker, Arthur.
we should do them live. And I was like, yeah, well, it's easy for you to say because that's what you do. You were really cool and kind of made me feel comfortable about that.
But then you did it live. I can assure you that Joaquin, using his natural voice, was just so much more compelling than any lip syncing would ever be.
Gaga's limitless vocal abilities highlight her surprise album Harlequin, which drops today, inspired by her Folie à Deux film characterization. We know you have a once-in-a-generation voice, but you're playing a character here, and you're using that voice the way the character would.
Well, you know, Lee's not a performer, and I am, and in a scene as a different character, it's just completely different. It's Lee's reality, it's their shared reality, it's coming from that character, not from me as a performer. But I also think, like, you know, I don't just sing that way in this movie. I also sing with my full voice.
Gaga's capacity for on-screen intimacy, and Joaquin's depiction of Joker producing some revealing moments.
There was something like completely freeing about playing this character because I was able to put some things of myself in her that maybe I've always been embarrassed of, or things that are really private. When I first saw the film, I remember thinking, oh, like, that's in there, you know? Like that thing,
part of me.
that part of me that I want no one to know about. And I think part of that was like, she's kind of, in some moments, like, she's kind of so uncomfortable. She's like on the edge. There's definitely been times in my life where I've felt that way.
You can do anything you want. You're Joker.
I heard that line, I thought, well, so much of your career is about that.
You can try anything you want. So I guess I feel like, yeah, I have the opportunity to try anything, and then I rely on somebody else to make it work.